All right, welcome. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on a really powerful, but actually super simple system that the best chess players in the world use to find a great plan in basically any position. It's all about getting rid of that guesswork and starting to think with real clarity, grandmaster level clarity. So let's jump right in.
So you know that feeling, right? We've all been there. The opening's over, your pieces are developed, and you just stare at the board. You're thinking, okay, now what? It is such a frustrating moment where you feel like a good plan is just a million miles away. Well, what if I told you that whole moment of confusion could just disappear? See, grandmasters, they aren't just human calculators running through millions of moves. No, they're using a structured, almost elegant thinking process to really understand the position and find the right way forward. And that's exactly what we're going to break down today.
So here's what we've got on tap. We'll start with the system itself, the simple three-factor approach. Then we're going to look at some real examples, finding a weak pawn, figuring out good versus bad pieces, and then what to do when there's, well, no weakness at all. And then we'll tie it all together into a new thinking process you can use.
Okay, let's dive into the core of it. This isn't about memorizing a bunch of theory. Nope. This is about having a key, a universal key, that can unlock pretty much any position you're ever going to face.
And the process itself, it's actually really simple. It's just 3 steps. First, you understand the position. You evaluate a few key things. Then, based on what you see, you apply some core strategic ideas. And from there, you build a real concrete plan of action.
And here they are. These are the 3 pillars that everything else is built on. You've got king safety, you've got piece activity, and you have pawn structure. That's it. If you analyze just these 3 things every single time, you will always know where to start.
Okay, enough theory. Let's actually put this into practice. For our first case study, we're going to look at maybe the most common situation in chess, finding a clear weakness and then going after it.
Okay, so put yourself in the driver's seat here. You're playing white. The opening is done. Things are pretty calm. No obvious attacks, no fireworks. So what do? What's the plan? Let's run it through our 3-factor system and see what it tells us.
First things first, let's check king's safety. Look at our king on g1. It's totally safe, right? Tucked in behind his little pawn fortress. And black's king over on g8, pretty much the same deal. So a big, flashy attack on the king, that's not the plan right now. We can just file that away and move on to factor number 2.
Okay, second factor, piece activity. Let's just do a quick scan of the board. Our light squared bishop, that's a nice piece. The knight on f3, solid. But there's always one question you have to ask yourself. Which one of my pieces is doing the least? Which one is the laziest? And here, it's pretty clearly that rook on d1. It's just sitting there. And pinpointing your worst piece is an absolutely crucial part of this process.
And now for the third factor, pawn structure. And listen, this is where the secrets of the position really come out. Our pawn structure, it's fine, totally solid. But look at black's pawn on d5. Just zoom in on that guy for a second. See how it has no friends? No other black pawns on the files next to it to help out? That makes it isolated. It's what we call a permanent weakness. And that, right there, that's our target.
So now we just put the pieces together. It's actually that simple. We found our target, right? That weak d5 pawn. And we found our laziest piece, the rook on d1. So the plan basically writes itself. We're going to improve our worst piece in order to attack their biggest weakness. The plan is to get that rook off d1, swing it over to the d file, and just start leaning on that pawn. It's simple, it's logical, and it is so powerful.
All right, let's take it up a notch. For our next case study, we're going to look at something a little more subtle, a little more advanced. We're diving into a classic game from the one and only Bobby Fischer, who was an absolute master at seeing these tiny little imbalances and just turning them into a win.
Now, to really get what's going on in this position, you need to know a concept. It's a Spanish term, peón gordo, which literally translates to fat pawn. And it's such a great term. It's for a piece, usually it's a bishop, that is so completely trapped by its own pawns that it's basically useless. It's just a big, fat pawn taking up space. It's a dead piece. And in this position, you can see the perfect example. Just look at the contrast between these 2 pieces. On one hand, you have white's knight. It's an absolute monster, just eyeing that juicy d5 square, controlling everything. And on the other hand, you have black's dark squared bishop. It is the definition of a peón gordo. Look at it. It's completely walled in by its own pawns on d6 and f6. It can't go anywhere. It's just a glorified pawn. This difference in the quality of the pieces, that's a huge strategic advantage for white.
And this all leads to a really deep strategic idea.
captured perfectly in this quote. When you're thinking about trades, the most important thing isn't what you're giving up. It's about what's left on the board after the trade is done. It's the new landscape that matters.
Okay, so here's where the genius of Fisher really comes in. Your first instinct might be, wait, why would I trade my good bishop? It's one of my best pieces. But Fisher understood that principle. He trades his good bishop for Black's good knight. And why? Because look at what's left on the board. He's left with his monster knight staring down that useless fat pawn bishop. That imbalance is completely winning. And from there, the rest of the game was a matter of technique.
All right, but what about those games where you do the evaluation and nothing? There are no weak pawns to attack, there are no bad pieces, everything just looks balanced. So what do? Just offer a draw? No way, not so fast.
When you're in a position like that, you really have two main jobs. Job number one is simple. Just improve your own position. Find your worst piece and make it better. Job number two is a bit more ambitious. You actively try to create a weakness. You force one into existence.
Let's take a look. In this position, for example, that white bishop on f1 is pretty sad. It's doing nothing. So a simple plan could be just to make it better. You could start a little journey for that bishop, maybe bring it to g2, or even get it all the way over to h3. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you're building a real attack on the king. You're creating pressure from absolutely nothing. That's what we call proactive improvement.
Or you can be a bit more forceful about it. Look at this example. White plays the move c5. Now, on the surface, this just looks like a pawn move. It's not winning a piece or anything. But it's a strategic weapon. It's what we call a pawn break, and it's designed to force your opponent to do something. So after the pawns get traded on that square, poof, look what just appeared. Black now has a brand new, permanent weak pawn on d6 to worry about for the rest of the game. We literally just created a target out of thin air.
Okay, so we've covered the system, we've walked through the examples, now let's wrap this all up into a super practical process that you can literally take with you to your very next game. So here it is. This is your new mental checklist. From now on, whenever it's your move and you feel that sense of, what now? Just run through these questions. First, how are the kings? Is mine safe? Is theirs weak? Second, how are my pieces doing? And most importantly, which one is my worst piece? Third, where are the weak pawns? Hunt them down. I promise you, the answers to these questions will point you straight to a good plan.
Look, at the end of the day, this system isn't really about finding that one single perfect computer-approved best move. It's about something much deeper. It's about developing that grandmaster-level understanding so that you can always find a strong, logical plan. So the only real question left is, now that you have this in your toolkit, what awesome hidden plans are you going to uncover the next time you sit down to play? Go find out.